Hey guys, this is the mid-Puck video on Puck's skills and talents. Puck's skill progression is, to me, one of the most enjoyable in the game. He's not a completely stale hero when it comes to the skill build. You can mix it up pretty often, which is really nice and keeps it interesting, in my opinion. So, let's jump right in. The skill build for Puck is what we're going to go over first, then we'll go over the talents afterwards. So, for Puck's level 1, we're really only going to have the choice between Illusory Orb and Phase Shift here. Winning Rift doesn't have too much utility at level 1, and the other abilities are generally just better to get. So our level 1 decision is going to be between the Illusory Orb or the Phase Shift. So we have to understand when each is better and what advantages we get out of getting each one. So let's just go over the advantages here. The advantages of Illusory Orb level 1 is that you can usually secure a better block by using your Illusory Orb, picking up the initial bounty rune and jaunting closer to your creep wave so you don't have to walk the full distance, as well as using the Illusory Orb in the first wave to secure the ranged creep, blast it, and secure harassment on the enemy. So the cons for the Illusory Orb level 1 is that you're only going to be able to disjoint spells such as a Queen of Pain dagger if you use your Illusory Orb to actually dodge it. So when it comes to Quap's Dagger, it's much easier to dodge with a Phase Shift, and obviously you don't expend mana using Phase Shift, so it's not going to cost you anything to dodge it with Phase Shift. But if you have this Illusory Orb level 1 and the Queen of Pain tries to dagger you, you're going to have to jaunt your orb while the dagger's flying for you to actually disjoint it. So you're going to have to be careful with some of these things that you're wanting to disjoint level 1 if you're going for this Illusory Orb first build, because you don't want to end up taking too much harassment because you don't have Phase Shift ready. As for Phase Shift level 1, you can get Phase Shift level 1 against heroes like Queen of Pain, maybe other, high damage output heroes in lane, so something like maybe a Storm Spirit you're going to want to avoid as auto attacks, something like that, but usually we're going to be getting the Illusory Orb level 1. Nothing is too scary to lane against with no Phase Shift at level 1, so I say we're usually going to put the skill point into Illusory Orb level 1 and just proceed to get our Phase Shift at level 2. After we have our first ability, we're going to put our second one into the opposite, Illusory Orb or Phase Shift. So if you got Phase Shift level 1 for some reason that you decided in your game, you're going to be getting your Illusory Orb level 2. If you got your Illusory Orb level 1, we'll get our Phase Shift level 2. Level 3, we're usually going to be putting this one into Illusory Orb to get it to level 2. Level 1 Waning Rift at this stage in the game is not really going to do too much other than waste your mana. So we're going to be just putting more points into our Illusory Orb at this stage of the game, just to get us extra damage for lane, extra harassment, extra last hitting ability. It just gives you more control over your lane than Waning Rift level. So for level 4, we're going to be getting our first point in Waning Rift. This is just a generally good ability to get right now. The only other decision you could make at this point is putting a second in your Phase Shift and you won't have your silence available. So we're going to be getting the Waning Rift at level 4 every time. Level 5 is one of my favorite level progressions for Puck. This is where you can really stem out into many different routes with your skill build, and it's going to be very game dependent here. So you can make a few decisions at level 5. At level 5, we're going to have 2 points in our Illusory Orb, 1 in our Waning Rift, and 1 in our Phase Shift, and we're going to be able to put it into anything we really want here. We're usually not going to put it into Phase Shift because you don't really need more than the short Phase Shift early on in the game just to disjoint certain things. You want to really get more damage and utility from your other abilities. So we're only going to have our decision here between Waning Rift and Illusory Orb. Against heroes that have escapes, things like Queen of Pain, Storm Spirit, even Invoker to some extent, you might want to value putting more points into your Waning Rift and your skill build earlier than your Orb, because then you can have a longer duration silence to control your enemy a lot easier. So in my opinion, against these heroes like Queen of Pain and Storm, you're going to be wanting to put your 5th point here into silence and max out your silence before your Illusory Orb so you can control your enemy a lot easier. When it comes to other heroes that you don't need silences for to be able to play aggressively on, we can just put our points into our Orb here. It gives us more farming capability, and it's just generally a better ability in lane to max if the enemy doesn't have any evasive maneuvers or anything, because you're going to be able to push out waves a lot easier, better rune control. You won't even have to use your silence to clear these waves. It'll just be more efficient to use for your mana. So if there is no hero such as Queen of Pain or Storm that you're up against that you want to control with a silence, then we're going to be putting our 5th point into Illusory Orb instead. This progression, it'll probably just scale off whatever you leveled at this level 5. If you leveled your Illusory Orb at level 5, because you didn't need the CC, we'll just be getting our ultimate at level 6 and probably maxing out our Illusory Orb at level 7, unless you want to put a point into your silence at that point. Puck's skill build is super versatile. You can make tons of different decisions based on the game. It all depends on what you want to accomplish with your puck. So if you want more silence, you're going to be putting points into Winning Rift. If you want more wave clear, more just chip damage, then you're going to be wanting to put it into your Illusory Orb. So if you go this Illusory Orb build at level 7, you can max it. Most of the time I prefer to leave it at level 3 and just get Waning Rift and max out my Waning Rift, or get that to level 3 and then max out my Illusory Orb. It really doesn't matter where you stem with your build right here, as long as you're, trying to get the maximum of each of your abilities for the game specifically that you're playing. When it comes to your Waning Rift build, if you got Waning Rift at level 5 and now you have a 2-2-1 build, then you're going to be getting your ultimate at 6, Waning Rift at 7 and 8 to max it out, and then maxing out your Illusory Orb afterwards. And with Puck, you're not going to be skipping your talents. So Puck's talents are really good in my opinion. It's really, really nice to have your talents at their respective levels on Puck. The only one that could be, really argued to skip is your level 10 talent, but I think 8 int is a pretty good value for level 10, so I don't think you should skip this talent. After your Waning Rift and your Illusory Orb abilities are maxed out, we're going to be focusing on maxing our Phase Shift afterwards, as well as our ultimate. We're just going to be getting our Phase Shift, ultimate, and talents at every respective level after that point, and that's when your skill build has really pretty set in stone after you max your first 2 abilities. So that's about it for the skill builds. Let's move on to what talents we're getting and why. So Puck's level 10 talent is the choice between 175 HP or 8 intelligence. So 175 HP is a decent amount of HP in the early game, but the 8 int has a pretty good value for just getting for free at level 10, and it'll give you more resources to work with for your mana pool, as well as more damage for your auto attacks and spells, since they scale off int just a little bit now. So I think we're usually going to be getting this 8 int talent unless we really, really need to survive something in that game. But since Puck just kind of dies if things get on top of her anyway, we're going to be usually just getting the int talent at level 10. At level 15, Puck has the benefit of getting plus 50 damage at 15. We're going to be getting the 50 damage basically every game, because that is a ton of damage at level 15. It makes Puck right click like a truck. You're going to be able to take towers and be able to, output DPS in team fights a lot more than just using your abilities. It's a super good talent to get, and we'll get our damage every time. As for level 20, I believe the 10% spell amplification rather than the 3-second Waning Rift cooldown reduction is much better. The 3 seconds Waning Rift is not completely necessary. It's not like it'll match like 10% spell amp in almost any case. 3 seconds is not a huge cooldown reduction at all, so I think just having the spell amplification is much better in every scenario, to be honest. So we're going to be getting the spell amp at level 20. As for the 25 talent, this is definitely the hardest choice when it comes to talents. It's the plus 75% Illusory Orb distance and speed, or the 420 gold per minute talent at 25. So it's a pretty hard choice in my opinion. It really goes game to game, this talent on Puck. But the telltale signs that you're going to have to look for is if you actually need the gold, if that makes sense. So if you hit 25 and you're 6 slotted and your teammates aren't in need of anything, then it's probably better just to get your Illusory Orb and distance and speed here, because you're going to be able to utilize that better than a bunch of extra gold that's just not going to be really used. On the other case, if you hit level 25 and you've got like 4 items or 3 items, then this GPM talent is definitely the way to go, because you want to get your slots super fast here, and it will get you your slots super fast having 420 GPM at 25. Another use for this talent is to just hand out wards, hand out sentries, buy gems, and put them in your base to collect them. Not just for fun, it's good to have gems in the late game, as well as, just buying moon shards for all your teammates, since you just have this crazy amount of gold that you're always going to have. So it's definitely a good ability, but you just got to assess your game, and if it actually matters if you have a bunch of extra gold, if that makes sense. So that's about it for Puck's skill build and talents. Just a brief little recap here. We're going to be maxing out our Orb and our Waning Rift in the order depending on the game, but we're going to have those maxed first with 1 point in our phase shift and 1 point in our ultimate. And we're going to be getting our ultimate as well as the talents at every progression. The only kind of rebuttal to that is if we want to delay getting our ultimate to get more points in phase shift, if you feel like phase shift is a more essential skill that game to dodge a bunch of things, you can delay getting your ultimate and get your phase shift prior. But for the most case, we're going to be getting our ultimate at level 12 anyway, so we're just going to keep it at whatever progression that we get for our ultimate. And then that's about it, really. Everything progresses as expected on Puck when it comes to skills. We're just going to be maxing our first two abilities first. That's our only little secret on Puck. And we'll be getting our int, 50 damage, 10% spell amp, and then whatever 25 talent is better based on the game if you need the gold. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, put it below and I'll try to get to it. Thanks.